Hello everyone, in this episode of Motive Garage, we are increasing the power on our GR Yaris. Now, if you saw the last video on our GR Yaris when we installed the motec, you'll see that we got a time slip that made it the quickest GR Yaris in the world. Well, as far as we know, no one's come out with another time slip since, so we're going to claim it. We also got our lap record back at Wakefield, but that has since been beaten. Now, we could probably go out and try and fight for that lap time back with small tweaks to suspension setup and things like that, but we decided we wanted to continue the power development with our Yaris. So we headed over to our friends at PowerTune Australia and see how much more power we can make.
So after our outing at the drag strip and the racetrack, basically we've got some data back from those events, and we've established that the car was essentially encountering valve float. So that can be because the boost has been increased in the car, the cylinder pressure has been increased, and subsequently the factory valve springs aren't able to keep up. Now, that's not something that we were able to see on the dyno necessarily. When Andrew basically went down the drag strip, he was able to sort of give me some feedback and say, hey, look, it felt like there was a limiter around sort of 7 grand. Looking at the log, there wasn't a limiter at 7 grand. So we established that there was a limiter mechanically being in place. So in its simplest form, valve float is where the valve doesn't follow the lobe on the camshaft. Now that's because of pressures either before or after the valve, whether it be exhaust, intake, or whatever it may be. And what happens there is that you'll run into a situation where the valve may stay open, and you can encounter things like misfires. And in the case of the Yaris, it actually gave us what feels like a soft limiter. Gives like a fluffy sound out the exhaust. And you can see that in the log where basically the engine speed doesn't increase, and on a dyno the power will basically nose over. So at the end of the last video, when we did have some information about the drags and the track, we didn't mention this purely because we weren't 100% sure that this is exactly what was causing it. We did some investigation and we've found that Kelford were able to offer a upgraded valve spring kit. So what we've done is we've elected to fit that to the car, and as you can see from today's results, it's certainly fixed the problem that was there. Doing the valve springs in the Yaris is a relatively straightforward job. Can be done with the engine in the car, although it takes sort of around about a day and a half, depending sort of how fast you sort of work through it. A lot of stuff has to come apart from the car, so the camshafts obviously have to come out. All the timing gear on the front of the engine has to come off, and because it is chain, it sort of can be a little bit trickier. So with the Yaris, the valve springs are probably one of the first things that you need to do, purely because once the cylinder pressure increases, this is going to be a hard mechanical limit. So putting a bigger turbocharger or changing other things, it's not going to help this situation. You're still going to run into the same problem, and you'll still encounter the same issue. So straight away, once the valve springs were in the car, we were able to see the car was able to sort of rev right through to redline quite happily, no issue. There wasn't any hints of misfiring or sort of soft misfire or that fluffiness that I spoke about. So we're able to tell straight away we can now actually rev this car harder. So effectively, we also made the choice to change to E85 as well. Now the process of that was to install a flex fuel sensor, which we've made a kit for, which will actually bolt into the factory or connect to the factory connections. So you're able to actually remove the sensor, replace with the factory lines. It's a straightforward plug and play operation and just pins into the motec ECU. After that's done, change the fuel over and actually add some ethanol into the fuel and progress through tuning different ethanol percentages. We found the limit of the factory injectors. As mentioned in the previous video, we talked about the size of the secondary injectors in the Yaris from factory is only very small. They're typically only used to clean the valves. So pretty much the car makes most of its power, pretty much all of its power from the direct injectors, and it uses those injectors pretty much the whole way through the rev range. Only under certain circumstances does it use those port injectors to clean the back of the valves. So they're not really actually power adders in factory form. When moving to E85, we obviously need to deliver more fuel to the engine. Best way to achieve that, would be to increase the port injector size, because at the moment direct injectors are expensive, potentially not even developed for the Yaris yet, or larger ones. So it's much easier to just swap out the port injectors with a larger item, add contribution or effectively blend the amount of fuel that needs to be delivered to the secondary injectors and deliver the required amount of fuel. We got to a point that we maxed those injectors out very quickly. So the injectors that were fitted were supplied by Golby's Parts. They're a Deutschwerks 680cc injector. Everything comes supplied from them, and it was a very straightforward and easy operation to sort of install into the car. Basically then started tuning and found the limit basically of the factory turbo, where the turbo basically can't make any more boost. We've actually aimed for, in this car, 30 pounds from 5,500 revs up to 6,000 and beyond. The car just simply can't get there. What you'll actually see is that the duty cycle of the boost controller goes to 100%, and there's just no more boost to be had. Now, could we have made more boost earlier? Yes, it's certainly possible. However, in this case, this is not a destructive test. So we're not looking to find the absolute limit of this factory block or factory setup. We're just looking to try and make safe, reliable power that's, a really good increase over what the factory car makes. So in the mid-range, what we've actually seen is pretty much the same sort of power on E85 to 98. Now the difference there is that the boost is actually on a lower boost level. So previously we were targeting sort of 27, 28 pounds throughout the mid-range. Now with ethanol, we've been able to back that off to around sort of 25, 26 pounds, add a little bit of timing because the fuel now allows that, and make the same power effectively. Then we try and utilize more boost up top. You would have seen in the last video where the power was actually rolling off at sort of 6 to 6,500. That's where we were finding that valve float and that the engine just wasn't sort of happy on 98 fuel around that sort of area. We've been able to sort of extend that now, and we're able to rev it right through to red line. And the power now falls off at about sort of 7,100, back where it did from factory. Over standard, there's gains everywhere throughout the rev range. So I'm sure a lot of people will have the question, why keep the direct injection? Why not throw, massive 2,000cc port injectors in it and just run it on port injection? Now, from personal experience, I've tuned a number of different cars that have direct in port injection. For the exact same amount of fuel delivered, the same lambda aim, the same ignition timing and everything else on the dyno, the direct injector will make more power than the port injector. So what you'll actually find is that you have better starting, you have better drivability, you have better atomization of the fuel all down low, where it really kind of counts for drivability on the street. And then you get the benefit of the port injection up top, where drivability isn't really concerned. You're not driving around at 6,500 revs, driving around the streets. It's really, you benefit from all the benefits right down low, where the drivability and where you really want the car to drive like standard. Next upgrade that people are probably wondering is the fuel pump. So at the moment, we're still not out of pump, basically reached the limit of the factory turbo, but the pump hasn't run out. The fuel pump in these cars runs what we refer to as a deadhead setup. In this particular car, that's actually closed loop pressure controlled as well. There's actually a pressure sensor that runs in closed loop with the fuel hanger. And what it actually does is speed controls the pump inside the tank to maintain a rail pressure.
The next test for the car was an intake. We've seen so many wild claims for intake kit power gains, so we were interested to see if there really is any restriction in the factory intake system. We chose to use the intake kit from All Type Fabrication in Queensland. It is a high quality, well fabricated alloy intake that replaces everything from the turbo elbow. The piping and bends are much smoother than factory, and they end in a 5-inch bell mouth so it can take a large pod filter. Looking at it, you'd be hard pressed to find any restriction. It is integrated into an airbox that, although not 100% sealed, the lower section does stop hot air from the radiator getting sucked in as much as the lower intake flap on the factory airbox, and it takes its air from the vent in the front grille. It also has a top lid hiding the pod filter, which is required legally in some areas. We tested the off-the-shelf intake kit, but it is available without the provision for an airflow meter. The kit comes with all of the bolts, spacers and clamps required, and installation is very straightforward and can be done in under half an hour.
now that we've added the air intake to the car, it's sort of shown us a little bit of data. At the moment, the gains are really not quantifiable. The reason being is that we're testing the car on a roller dyno. There's a lot of environmental variables that come into play on a roller dyno. Now that is strapping, tyre heat, engine bay heat soak, all sorts of other bits and pieces that come into it. Where run to run, you can typically see a variance of anywhere between 0 and 10 kilowatts, just off the cuff. No timing changes, no boost changes, no difference. So in order to see a change from the air intake, we were kind of looking to see a substantial change in either direction, which we didn't get to see. So does that say that the intake didn't make power? No, it doesn't. But is it a massive increase in power? No, it's not. It's just not quantifiable on a roller dyno. So the one thing that we did see was around about half a pound of boost increase. Now, half a pound of boost is, as I mentioned, it's not really quantifiable. We'd be splitting hairs to say that the boost increase was due to purely the pipe work. At the end of the day, we haven't gone backwards in power. We haven't made massive jumps forward, but the thing sounds better. That's pretty much, enough for some people to fit it to their car. Today's test has used basically average numbers, so we haven't actually manipulated any figures. The dyno's been strapped, and the car's been run on the same dyno, the same day, the same temperatures and everything else. Now, the thing is that the car this morning, when we ran it up, made 198 kilowatts or thereabouts, first run. And we also seen a run today at around about 220 kilowatts, or 219 kilowatts to be exact. Now, the difference between those two runs, to give you the idea, is the strapping on the car. So we literally loosened the straps off, let the car roll up onto the dyno more, and the car magically made more power. Now, did the engine make more power? No, it didn't the car didn't magically pick up power from that. It's just simply how the dyno records that power. So it's very difficult when people are comparing dyno figures from one shop to another, or with one test strapped on one day, strapped on another day. You can see massive variances. So when different companies basically quote different power figures or power gains, there's lots of things that you have to take into consideration, and you shouldn't just jump onto the idea that this intake's magically going to make me 30 more horsepower or 15 more horsepower, because the test may have been done on a day where it was strapped tight, and the next day it was strapped much looser. It's just something very, very simple that causes a big power difference. So from factory, the car come in and on our dyno rolled up around 150 kilowatts, 155 kilowatts. Once we finished with the stock ECU, we moved on to the motec. We did our 98 tuning, and we ended up with an average of around about 195 kilowatts. Now, we're sort of seeing, 193, 197, thereabouts, run to run variances, but as an average, about 195 kilowatts on 98. However, as we mentioned, the power was sort of falling over a little bit earlier, but this is just peak power increase. Once we moved to E85, the average went to about sort of 205, 206, 207, somewhere around there as an average. And after the intake, it's about 210. So there was maybe a small increase here. Now this is just purely peak power numbers. But if we look elsewhere in the graph, what you'll see is that the power increase is the entire graph. So I mean right from the very, very start of the run, not just where the boost comes on and everything else, it's the whole run. So there's multiple areas throughout the graph that you'll see. The car's made over 50 kilowatt increase. So that's a massive, massive difference in what you actually feel when you drive the car. Off the line, up the top, out of the corners, absolutely everywhere. So it's a huge gain, and that's what we really are looking at here. Not the total power figure, because we could throw this on a hub dyno and we could fudge it up and the thing would make magically 230, 240 kilowatts, something like that. But at the moment, this dyno, we've used the roller dyno, we've used the same dyno every time, and we're just looking at the gains. The next step is to put an intercooler into the car. Now, if we see a reduction in pressure drop across the core, what we may see is a small increase in power, and vice versa. As far as intake air temps, if the air temps do come down, there might be a little bit of a margin for a little bit more timing in different places. but it's not going to be a massive difference. So my expectation is that we won't see a huge increase in that, but what we'll see is the intake air temps come down, which is going to be much better for on the racetrack and things like that, where we're actually driving around for long periods of time. We can actually keep that inlet air temp down. If we want to make real power in the Yaris, basically we need to pull the exhaust manifold off, pull the turbo off, replace it with a bigger turbo, more boost, better manifold, let the thing breathe, basically. So Golby's Parts are working on a kit at the moment that you'll likely see go into this car, so we actually may get to see some serious power out of this Yaris.